Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever in the world you may be. Thanks for joining us for our pre-arrival webinar today, where we'll be talking about applying for your US student visa. My name is Grace Fuller. I serve as the manager for student experience and engagement here at the International Students and Programs Office, commonly referred to as ISPO. And I'll hand it over to my colleague Gabi to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Congratulations on your admission to UC San Diego. As Grace mentioned, my name is Gabi Hoffman. We work together at ISPO. I'm the Assistant Director of International Student Experience and Engagement.
All right, if you haven't joined us for previous webinars, a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. So you are in listen only mode, which means you can hear us, but unfortunately we can't hear you. So the primary way that we will interact together today is through the Q&A feature at the on your Zoom menu bar. We might be sharing different links and through the chat today, but again, the primary feature will be through that Q&A. Additionally, if for some reason we don't get to your question today, you can always reach out to our office via icontact.ucsd.edu. And then finally, we are recording. So you will be able to view this webinar as well as other webinar recordings. So for example, last week we did first steps at iwebinars.ucsd.edu by clicking on webinars for newly admitted students. And this is just a friendly reminder of what that Q&A feature is going to look like. You can submit questions at any time during today's webinar, but please know that we will try to cover a lot of information that may answer some of those questions, and we will have time dedicated at the end for an open question and answer. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gabi to talk a little bit about the steps of applying for your US student visa.
Thank you, Grace. So yes, the beginning, of course, of your student journey coming to UC San Diego is starting with your document request to apply for your student visa. So we're going to go ahead and go through the first steps in how to request the documents first, and then run through the visa process. Next slide. All right, so if you haven't visited the site already, I encourage you to take a look at our website, our first steps checklist. So the first steps checklist you can locate at inewstudent.ucsd.edu, which you can see here at the top of the page. This is a page dedicated specifically to new admit students, and you'll see there in the little box in the top left, we have a section specifically for undergraduate students. So this section designed just for you is here to help you, guide you through the first steps you're meant to take in order to request your documents. So you can find information about how to request your I-20 or DS 2019, but it also includes information on this page about preparing for arrival. So, you know, it's obviously, this is a time when you have a lot of different questions about what to do, how to get started. This page really outlines it in a step-by-step process for you. We also have a feature on our website, you can see in the corner, the bottom right here, called Ask a Triton. So you may be able to get immediate answers to your questions there as well. So we encourage you to try that. The website really has a wealth of information, so we encourage you to start here first before applying for your documents. But when you are ready to go, we will guide you through here and how to actually request those documents. So let's start here. Next slide, please. So the visa application, our visa application information. So the first step, before you even get that stamp in your passport to come to the United States, of course, you need documents in hand before you apply for that visa stamp. And in order to apply for those documents, you have to go to the iPortal, which is ISPO's specific portal for you to request any kind of international student document. Your first document will be your I-20 if you're applying for the F1 visa, or a Form DS 2019 if you're applying for a J1 visa. Just a quick note, the vast majority of undergraduate students apply for the I-20. So if you have questions about what is the J1, you know, what is a DS 2019, unless you are a student who is sponsored by their home government or by an international organization, you will typically apply for an I-20. So beginning March 1st, this iPortal system opened to all of our students to allow you to request your Form I-20. So if you go to iportal.ucsd.edu, Once you've set up your UCSD email and your login credentials through your Triton checklist via admissions, you will have access to this system. So once you have that in hand, you can log in. Then once you have your documents, that's when you can apply for your US visa. So we're going to go through the next steps here and what the iPortal application looks like. So again, here at iportal.ucsd.edu, once you have your login credentials, and on that iNew student page, I should say, we do give really clear instructions on how to set up your UCSD login, email, all of those different things so that you can access the iPortal. But once you have that, your single sign-on information, you log in. You will be expected to answer a series of questions about your studies here, sort of where your financing is coming from for your studies, for example, if it's family support or a scholarship or what have you. And then you'll be required to upload certain documents. That includes a copy of your passport, as well as financial support documents to show that you have sufficient funding to support your program of study. And in order to find out how much funding is required, you can reference our chart on our website at inewstudent.ucsd.edu that says specifically how much funding you need to show for your studies. Those, whether that's a bank statement or a support letter, those do need to be recent. They need to be from within the last 6 months. In order for us to issue a document. So first, make sure you're meeting those minimum requirements, and then make sure it's a valid document from within the last 6 months. Now, if you have a passport, because of course that's one of the documents required, if that is expiring soon, you can still apply for your I-20 through us. That does not slow down the process. However, you need to make sure that by the time you're planning to enter the United States, your passport is valid at least 6 months into the future after your planned date of entry. So for example, if you're planning to come in September to start the beginning of the school year, you're going to look at needing to have a passport that is valid at least until February, March of the next year, so that you can gain entry into the United States. But if you're in the process of renewing it, a lot of students are at this stage, that's okay. Just make sure you upload the copy, make a note that you're in the process of renewing it, and we can still issue your documents so that you can apply for your US visa. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is what the Form I-20 looks like for our students applying for the F1 visa, and this is what the Form DS-2019 looks like for those applying for the J1. You will note, and maybe you've heard from some friends who've studied in the US or through other means, that the Form I-20 can be issued electronically, which is wonderful. We used to have to mail these to students. The consulates and embassies used to require that you had an original copy, but now they will allow you to have a printed electronic copy that was sent to you. So what will happen is, within 15 days of applying in the iPortal for your document, our office will upload a copy of your I-20 document to your iPortal account, so you can download it there. I do want to stress that even though we are issuing you an electronic document, you still have to download, print the I-20 that we issued you, and sign the I-20. So you still need to bring a physical copy to your visa appointment and to travel, but it can be issued to you electronically. So that makes it a little bit easier. For J1 students, the J1 program is run by a different government agency. They are run by the Department of State. So they have different guidelines, and that agency, the Department of State, is still requiring a hard copy for J1 students. So we still do need to send you the hard copy by mail, but you can indicate how you would wish to receive that document in your iPortal account. You provide your shipping information, set up a shipping account, and then we will send it to you once it's ready. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go into the actual visa process once you have your documents in hand, and just kind of give a few tips on what to expect, and little steps basically you need to be aware of along the way. So the first thing to note, if we have any citizens of Canada or Bermuda here, here today, note that you do not need to apply for a visa stamp in your passport. You still do need the I-20 or DS 2019 from us. You still need to print it, sign it, but you don't need to apply for a corresponding visa stamp in your passport. So that's nice. You still need to pay the associated SEVIS fees, which I'll go over momentarily. You just need to present that I-20 or DS 2019 to enter the US. Make sure you have receipts of those fees. And if you have more information, if you are a citizen of one of these countries, you can go to the travel.state.gov website, search citizens of Canada and Bermuda. It'll give more information exactly what to bring when you enter the US, but we also have information on our website on applying for a visa with what information you need to bring with you. So that's a nice perk for our Canadian citizens and those from Bermuda as well. Next slide. All right, so your visa documents. We took a quick look earlier in what this looks like, but I wanted to dig into a little bit more detail here so you kind of know what to look for on your document. So for those of you who have applied for your documents, this is what it will look like. And you need to be aware of the numbers that exist on your document in order to go and book your visa appointment. So all of you, whether you are applying for your F1 visa or J1, you will all have what is called a SEVIS ID. So if you look on the F1 document, at the very top left-hand corner, your SEVIS ID is marked there, exactly, red circled, the number that starts with N00. This is the number that allows you to go to your local embassy or consulate's website, enter it into your application form so that you can book your appointment. For our J1 students, it's over in the top right-hand corner of the document. J1 students also have a program number, an exchange visitor number that you'll see located at the top right. You'll also need that number to apply for your visa. So once those documents are available to you, then you can use this information to book your appointment. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so once you are ready to book your appointment, you want to take a look at your specific scenario. We know that there are some students coming to UC San Diego or coming to a US school for the very first time. There are some students who have been studying in the United States already, maybe at a US high school, and they are transferring their I-20 and they're not sure, do I need a stamp or not? So I've laid out some examples here of when you might or might not need a US visa stamp. So let's go through these examples together. So let's say, for example, you have a brand new UCSD I-20 or DS 2019. You also have a valid F1 or visa stamp in your passport from a past visa appointment with a different school name, but you never used it to enter the US. So for example, this happens quite frequently this time of year. If students, of course, they're still making admissions decisions, if they've applied to various different US schools, let's say they first decided to attend a different US school, not UC San Diego. They got the I-20 from that school, they applied for a visa stamp, but in the end, they decided, I actually want to come to UC San Diego, but they have a visa stamp already. If that's the case, and you do end up coming to UC San Diego instead, you never used the visa from that other school that you were admitted to, you cannot use this visa to enter the US. You do have to apply for a new visa stamp from that corresponds to your UC San Diego I-20 or DS 2019. So I just want to make some students aware of that because it does happen pretty fairly commonly throughout the season. All right, the next scenario, I have a brand new UC San Diego I-20 or DS 2019. I also have a valid F1 or J1 visa stamp from my passport that I used from attending my last US school. So the example I gave previously, perhaps you were at a US high school, your visa stamp in your passport is valid into the future, and you want to use that stamp to enter the United States. If you're going home in the summer before coming back, you may be able to use that visa. We do recommend that you check with your US consulate first before attempting to travel with it. But if you transfer if you have a brand new I-20, but you have also a valid visa stamp from your previous school, you might be able to still use that. We just recommend you check first. And then the last scenario here, let's say that you attended a US school here, US high school, for example, and you transferred your I-20 or DS 2019, and your old visa is still valid. In that case, you can absolutely still use this visa stamp, even if your school name doesn't match your I-20. It might say your old high school name on it, even though you're attending UC San Diego. If you leave for the summer, you go home and you want to come back and still use that visa stamp, if it's valid into the future, you can absolutely use that visa stamp. Only the SEVIS ID needs to match the number that's on your I-20 or DS and the number that's on your passport. So those are just a few examples I wanted to provide because they commonly come up. Hopefully they're helpful. They don't lead to more confusion, but these are common questions that I wanted to address from the beginning. So, all right, next slide. So for those of you who have never applied for a visa appointment before, here are some tips and tricks on how to apply for that visa. So the first place you want to go, if you're not sure where to apply for your US visa, where your local consulate or embassy is, you can see here, you go to the usembassy.gov website, and you can do a search. Your local US consulate or embassy that issues non-immigrant F1 or J1 visas. You can see here, if you find your local one, they actually, each consulate will have a section for non-immigrant visas. And you basically just follow the steps there. They usually will have an electronic process to apply. You need to fill out an application, pay certain fees, which I'll go over momentarily. And you also need to provide your SEVIS ID that's on your document to apply for the visa. So this is where I'd recommend starting first. They give clear instructions then on how to apply for your visa at your local US consulate or embassy. All right, next slide. All right. So this electronic form, this application that I was talking about that you apply for your visa stamp or your appointment with is called the Form DS-160. So in order to start this application form, you do need to have your passport with you and your Form I-20 or DS 2019. Make sure at the end of the application you print the confirmation screen and bring that to your appointment. It's proof of your appointment. Make sure you've paid your MRV fee. This is required of all applicants. It's 160 US dollars. Each embassy might have different payment instructions. Some are electronic, some are Western Union, different methods. So make sure that you check before going to your visa appointment. And then again, for more information on how to apply for the DS-160, you can go to travel.state.gov or usembassy.gov, the previous link that I provided. All right, the next slide. So in addition to your visa fee, all students are required to also pay the SEVIS fee. This is really important because it used to be that this fee was required before your visa appointment, but we're noticing more and more that embassies are not necessarily checking for proof of this payment before your appointment. So some students are not paying it, and this leads to pretty big problems when you come to the US. What it means is if you don't pay this fee, we cannot register your record here in the US, which means that you could fall out of status if you don't have this paid. So it's really important you pay this alongside your MRV fee, your visa fee. The instructions should be on the consular website where you're applying, but if you don't have those instructions, they're on our website, and you can also go to fmjfee.com. The fee for F1 students currently is $350. The fee for J1 students is $220. Again, for those embassies and consulates that do still require this before the appointment, you do have to pay this at least 3 days before the visa appointment, but some don't require it at all. So we encourage you to err on the side of caution and still pay this before your visa appointment. And for more information, there is a visa payment tutorial at the fmjfee.com website as well for you to kind of go through the steps on how to pay. All right, so next we're going to talk about preparing for your visa interview. If you've never had them before, these are some general tips about what to expect. All right, so what to bring? First things first, what to bring to your visa interview. Of course, you will need to have your passport. And I touched upon this a little bit earlier. Even though you might not need a valid passport or one that is expiring soon for your I-20, once you actually go to your visa appointment, you do need a valid passport, one that is valid at least 6 months after your date of planned entry to the US. Otherwise, your visa stamp will be put on hold until you show proof of that valid passport. You do need to show the original, and there's a caveat there for the I-20, the printed I-20. So you cannot just show it on your tablet or your phone. It does have to be printed. You do have to show evidence of financial support, and this can be and should be the same documents that you provided to us in order for us to issue the I-20 or DS 2019. You do need to show your Form DS 160 receipt, payment receipt, your receipt of the SEVIS I-901 fee, and then lastly here, documentation of home country address. This is important to show as best as possible your ties to your home country. And the reason for this is the F1 visa and J1 visa, these are non-immigrant visa types. The intent is that you come here to study, you make full use of that visa, including work authorization if you wish. But the ultimate intent after you complete your studies and your work is that you return to your home country. That is the intent of the visa. So the consular officer wants to make sure that you have an intention, a best intention to return to your home country. And that can be difficult to prove, of course. So we recommend to students bringing things like utility bills, water, electricity bills, showing that you have a permanent address in your home country. It can be ties, it can show ties to property ownership that your parents have, for example, things of that nature, if there's any doubts about ties to your home country. So just bring that just in case. You might not be asked for it, but it's good to have it just to be on the safe side. All right, next slide. So the interview itself. Some of the interviews have changed, of course, over the last 2 years. Some of these have been done either without interviews due to COVID, or they've just been curtailed. But in general, this is what the interview will look like. It should be brief. And make sure you keep that same sort of attitude. Just be brief in your answers that you provide, and maintain a positive attitude. Talk about your program of study. Talk about how it's connected to your long-term career goals. If you don't know exactly yet, that's okay. Talk about your interest in your area of study, and why specifically you see San Diego, why you wanted to come here. Be prepared to have the interview conducted in English. And again, be prepared to demonstrate ties to your home country if asked. One thing to keep in mind, you don't have to offer information that you're not asked. So just maintain answers to questions that you are specifically asked. That's the best way to kind of conduct your interview. All right, next slide. Okay, so visa delays. For the vast majority of students, they do not experience delays in their specific visa application due to issues with the visa application. But we know, of course, with COVID, and we know there's still an impact in getting visa appointments at this time. And we know there can be delays that can cause a lot of worry and concern among our students. So we want to make sure that we are here to support you. We are here to provide guidance should you need it. We are constantly monitoring the progress of visa appointments and how they are opening up across the world, so that we can provide consistent guidance to you and help you get here in time to start your studies. But should you receive any kind of notification that your visa is delayed, I'll go over here in the next steps what you can do. So the first type of visa delay that we sometimes see our students experience is called administrative processing. So what this is, it's a special security clearance procedure for your visa application specifically that can last up to 60 days or more. If this is something that you are subject to, you should receive a letter either in person or via email after your appointment called a 221G, indicating that your visa is on hold for security checks. These security checks are very, very difficult for us to check on because we are not allowed to receive any information on it. Nor is the student. They are just told we have to wait for security clearance to happen in Washington, D.C., and we just have to wait the process out. There's very little that ISPO can do. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of influence on our U.S. embassies or consulates. But you can check the status of your visa application by going to the web link here at the State Department's website. If it has been more than 60 days since your visa interview, you can contact the embassy directly for an update. I'll go over in the next slide how we can help you with that process as well. Next slide. All right, so we are your first point of contact needing any kind of support with your visa. Of course, it's important to keep your college or your department updated if there are going to be delays to arrival, but we can be your first point of contact and help you through the process if you're experiencing visa delays or administrative processing. So we can issue you support letters for you to provide to the embassy or consulate if it's been more than 60 days of waiting. We can help liaise with your department or your college on next steps if there are going to be delays to your arrival. Your college might be able to provide additional documents if the consulate, for example, requests specific information about your area of study, detailed study plans or study-related information. The colleges might be able to provide this information in conjunction with ISPO. We can give that to you so that you can provide that to the embassy. But we would recommend that you contact ISPO first if you have any visa delays. And if you're experiencing those delays, we encourage you to contact us at inewstudent@ucsd.edu, just here at the bottom of the screen. We can intake your request and then provide next steps on where to go and how to get support. Yes, and Grace has put that in the chat as well. Thank you. All right, and here then are some additional resources for you to take a look at and just to be cognizant of. We know that, of course, we are entering a better phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, and things are looking, we're looking to the future cautiously, optimistically, but we know that there are, of course, still some impacts, residual impacts that are happening. So we want to make sure you're updated and know how to plan for those in the coming months. So with that in mind, a couple of years ago, we created the coronavirus FAQs webpage on the ISPO website. If you go to iupdates.ucsd.edu, this page is still regularly updated. It talks about various different topics related to specifically international students, how the pandemic has impacted international students, and how any further updates might impact things for you. So it touches upon topics like enrollment, visa and immigration documents, and travel. So again, we encourage you to take a look at iupdates.ucsd.edu. It gives current information, current impacts, and how the school year will look coming up, and what things you need to plan for should things pivot or change with the pandemic. All right, next slide. So another great resource for you, we encourage all of our students to take a look, is UC San Diego's Return to Learn website. It's returntolearn.ucsd.edu. This is a really comprehensive website that gives an overview as to how the campus has been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's return to site operations. It goes over masking guidelines, safety guidelines, what classes look like, how many are back in person, for example, versus online. And I should say the majority of classes are back in person, about 95%. We're hoping that that continues to be the case through the summer and the fall. But it also has this wonderful dashboard, which you can take a look at and see almost in real time what case rates are like at UC San Diego. If you have any concerns about safety or transmission rates or things of that nature, this is a great resource to share with your family members, or as well if they're concerned about you traveling. So you can see here, the dashboard shows data of UC San Diego students and employees who have been tested for COVID and how many positive cases there are. So as of yesterday's data, there have been 6 students residing on campus who tested positive, 6 students residing off campus who tested positive, and 2 campus employees who tested positive in the last 7 days. So out of hundreds of thousands of people on campus, this is still a very, very low percentage of positive cases amongst our campus population. So this is good. This is encouraging. We, of course, encourage you to continue to check this dashboard if you have any questions or concerns about the positivity rates of COVID at UC San Diego. All right, with that, I will pass it back to my colleague, Grace.
Thanks, Gabby. So I'm going to talk about a couple of ways that you can already start to engage with our Triton community and participate in student life here at UC San Diego. So one program I want to highlight is our International Peer Coaching Program. So our international peer coaches are students assigned to each college to specifically support our international first-year undergraduate students during their career at UC San Diego. So you. So if you would like to learn more about this program and sign up to be a part of the International Peer Coaching Program, you can head to the website ipeercoaching.ucsd.edu. I've also listed their email and their Instagram there. And this is a really great resource. I strongly recommend it for all first-year undergraduate international students. But we also realize that many of our students have questions right now, all the way through the summer. So before their first year at UC San Diego technically begins. And for that, our Global Ambassador program is a really great program. So it's a peer mentorship program that occurs over the summer. And you essentially get matched with a current undergraduate student at UC San Diego. In your mentee application, you can list your preference for your mentor. So maybe that's having a mentor from the same home country, maybe the same college, maybe the same major. And our program coordinators try to match our mentors and mentees to the best of their ability. But you can go to gap.ucsd.edu to sign up for the Global Ambassador program and apply to be a GAP mentee. And then we hope that you will already start engaging with us via social media. So our handle across all platforms is at ispo.ucsd.edu. And sorry, at ispo.ucsd, used to those vanity URLs. And you can also, we have created a filter pack to celebrate you becoming a new Triton. So if you go to our Instagram specifically and then head to our filters, you can see our UC San Diego filter pack. So we have 3 different filters. We hope that you'll have fun checking those out. And if you share in your story and tag us, we'll definitely reshare and you might be eligible for some giveaway prizes. So please feel free to tag us. Okay, transitioning into a last few reminders before we have our open question and answer session. So our next webinar, we'll talk about housing options for our undergraduate students. Then on May 5th, we'll have our partners from Student Health talk about different insurance and immunization requirements. May 17th, we'll have a myriad of campus partners to discuss campus safety. On May 19th, finances and student accounts. And on May 24th, we'll talk about student life and what it's like to get involved. And so again, iwebinars.ucsd.edu is just a great kind of one-stop shop. You'll click on webinars for newly admitted students, and that's where you'll both be able to view previous webinar recordings, as well as register for upcoming webinars. So here's a little bit of what that timeline looks like. Like my colleague Gabi mentioned, you can actually start requesting your visa documents via the iPortal right now. And then we are so excited to welcome our students in September at New International Student Orientation. Okay, so we will open it up to some question and answers. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. And so we'll give it a couple minutes. We don't have any in the Q&A right now. And if not, you can always reach us via inewstudent@ucsd.edu or iContact, and we'll see you for our next webinar. But I'll give it another minute or so. All right, so I think that just means congrats to my colleague Gabi for facilitating such a thorough webinar that answered all of your questions about applying for your US student visa. Again, you can always contact our office in the ways mentioned before, and we are just so excited to have you as a Triton and welcome you into our campus community. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.